Unfortunately, one of the biggest myths in habitat improvement is that you have to have super deep pockets and you have to have countless acres to make a positive difference. Neither are the case, and that's what we're going to talk about today, how we can make small properties sing. Because quite honestly, as a small property owner, our margin of error is very, very small. I've managed a whole bunch of really large properties and even more small properties, and trust me when I tell you, on those large properties, I can't mess them up if I try. The small properties, we sure can, and this is how you can avoid it. We talk a ton about creating high odds, low impact setups. To be most effective, you have to match your improvements to the habitat. Western habitat, heck of a lot different than Midwestern habitat. He's not putting all that energy into building up his antlers until his body's taken care of. The overwhelming majority of the tips that I come up with are issues I'm running into while I'm out here working. One of the great ironies about habitat improvement is almost everything that is discussed in shows, articles, that type of stuff applies to the large landowners, but a heck of a lot of it doesn't to the small landowners. And the ironic part, messed up part, is that there's a heck of a lot of more people out there that own 10, 20, 30, 40 acres than 400, 4,000, or 40,000 acres. When you have a small real-world property, don't think for a second, don't buy the hype that you absolutely have to have deep pockets and you absolutely have to have sprawling acres to make a difference. You sure don't. As a matter of fact, that's another messed up belief that's been perpetuated. Really, if you own that 20, 40, 80, going ahead and doing habitat improvement is relatively much more beneficial. That 4,000 acre, 400 acre chunk of ground, it's going to have deer. Pretty much no matter what's going on, as long as the habitat's good and there's deer in the area. Okay, you have a 40, man, you can go ahead and mess that up big time. One of the primary considerations for small property owners is going ahead and manufacturing high odds, low impact stands. You are not going to have a plethora of different stand options to choose from. You don't. You only have 10 acres, 40 acres. So what you do is you set it up so that you have a handful of sweet spots on that property. And those sweet spots, you set up multiple stands. You set up multiple stands for multiple wind directions. Really put a huge importance level on keeping your impact low. Because on that 10, 20, 40 acres, just like that, deer can figure out. If you don't, deer will figure out you're hunting it and they will most likely avoid that. Okay. And lastly, for today, don't go ahead and focus on trying to offer them everything. That's awesome when you have 400 acres. If you can offer them absolutely everything they could possibly want, the best food, the best water, the best cover, the best feeling of false sense of security, breeding opportunities, water, everything better than they can get in the area, you know what? You draw a disproportionate amount of deer. On 400 acres, you darn right you can pull that off. You can often pull that off on a 120 or even an 80 acre piece. Pulling that off on a 40, a 20, or a 10 is pretty darn tough. Instead, focus on what does my property naturally offer? What are the deer utilizing on my property and what's in the shortest supply in the area as a whole? Okay. Go ahead, try to put what the deer are already using your property for on steroids. It's always easier to get them to do what you want them to do more if they're already doing it than to try to get them to do something they've never done before or get them to stop doing something. So Figure out what your ground is currently being used for and try to put that on steroids if you can. And then also, in that big picture view, what is this area most lacking? If you can supply that in a reasonable, rational way, do that as well. You do those two things while focusing on manufacturing high odds, low impact stand sites and keeping your impact low in those 10, 20, 40 acre properties, you can make those suckers sing. For as much as we talk about what can, and by we I mean the entire industry, on what you can do with a 400 acre piece of ground, we tend not to spend enough time on those 10, 20, and 40 acre pieces, because guess what? That's what the majority of hunters hunt and control. Focus on low impact, high odds stand setups on those small properties because your margin for error is very small. Set multiple stands for multiple wins. Figure out how the deer are already using the property, and if you can, put that on steroids. Look at the big overall picture in the area between food, water, cover, breeding opportunities, the various things deer want. What's in least supply? If you can go ahead and put what they're doing on steroids and offer them what is in least supply in that area while hunting from high odds, low impact stands, my friends, really, that's the ticket to making small properties sing. Grown Big TV is brought to you by Chestnut Hill Outdoors, RECONYX, see what you've been missing, and by Wildlife Research Center, the gold standard.
Antler King, makers of the world's best food plot products, providing the highest protein and the most tonnage. But most importantly, deer love Antler King food plots. Antler King, bigger bucks, healthier deer.
I don't pretend to be a TV person, a TV hunter in any way, shape, or form. But truly mature 8, actually the deer I was really hoping I'd see tonight. And I did. Heck of a blood trail. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to get this thing in the back of the hunt bee and go to work. But magnificent set. And one where everything just worked out the way it was supposed to and rewarded with an incredibly mature, beautiful, beautiful buck. I'm sure it didn't take an awful lot of convincing to get you all to believe that managing small properties, it comes with its own set of challenges. Now we're going to talk about how you can overcome those challenges. Don't buy into the hype. You don't have to have hundreds and thousands of acres to make habitat improvement worthwhile. As a matter of fact, it's more important on those small properties. You won't get as good a results oftentimes hunting, but you're going to get much better results on that small property doing some improvements than you are on that big property. The big property, it probably has everything that the deer already need. Will it benefit from improvements? Of course it will. But that small property, it's designing it so that you can hunt it in a high odds, low impact manner is mission critical. The more time you can get those deer to spend on your ground, the more that they believe they're safe there, which is a beautiful improvement you can make that doesn't cost yourself a cent. That is sanctuaries. The more it's going to pay off. Now, on those small properties, if you don't do these types of things, you're fighting an uphill battle. With these things, you're still fighting a little bit of an uphill battle, but it's not anywhere near as steep. Okay, you can go ahead and put in water sources. You can create mock scrapes. You can do hinge cut bedding areas, sidewalks, blockades, each one of them increasing the browse level on your property because those tops are now down at deer level. You can have loggers come in and actually put a little bit of money in your pockets at times by doing some TSI work. There's so many things that you can do that do not cost a cent. And you do them on small properties, they pay off even more. You get a bigger return on your investment than you do on the big properties. You go out and do some improvements. Does that mean that you're going to have 180-inch bucks running all over your 20? No. But your quality of your hunting, if you do it properly, is going to increase. Do not be one of those people that look for all these excuses not to do things. Instead, figure out creative ways to make it happen and make your own luck out in the deer woods. This segment of Grown Big TV is brought to you by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. There is no substitute. Grown Big TV is brought to you by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. There is no substitute. REDNECK Blinds, the best hunting blinds on the planet. Furminator, the best food plot implement on earth. Hunter Safety Systems, saving lives is what we do. And by Antler King, bigger bucks, healthier deer. So we've covered the challenges, we've covered what we can do about them. One thing we have left to cover though is tempering our own expectations. If you have wildly unrealistic expectations, you know what? You're going to end up being disappointed. If you have realistic expectations, you know what? We might just be able to help you exceed those. Here I am on a client's 80-acre piece of ground. It's in a decent area. It's in my home state of Wisconsin. Decent area, but it is not. This is not the trophy belt in Wisconsin, and this is not the trophy belt in Iowa, in Illinois, Missouri, Ohio, all this stuff. And it's a real world 80, surrounded on two sides by meat hunters, two sides on people who are managing deer. What can he realistically do here? We all want to manage for trophy bucks. Well, not all of us, but a lot of us do. Okay, is it realistic on a property like this? On a property like this, where you don't have full buy-in from all the neighbors, what you really want to focus on is what I realistically can do. Here, in my opinion, he realistically can manage for 3.5-year-old bucks. Now, he's got enough habitat here on the 80 acres. He's got a good swamp. He's got 2 neighbors that have bought in, 2 neighbors that don't. Is he going to lose deer? You darn right. He's going to lose all sorts of deer to the neighbors. He's also going to lose them to, frankly, dying from rut death. But it is quite possible on a piece of ground like this to go ahead and hold out for 3.5-year-old bucks and consistently do it. Now, are you going to tag out every single year? No. But it's a realistic goal. Some years you're even going to shoot a 4.5 or a 5.5-year-old buck. It may be once a lifetime, but it can happen. All right, so does it make any sense for him on this ground to manage for 4.5-year-old animals? Heck no, it doesn't. Because there aren't all sorts of 4.5-year-old animals around here. We're going to go ahead and set up this 80. So it has the best food, it has the best water, it has the best bedding, the best comfort, breeding opportunities, all that stuff. We are going to get deer to spend a disproportionate amount of time here. But we can't get them to live on 80 acres unless you put up a high fence. Okay, those deer are going to go over to the neighbors, the hard hunting neighbors that are both, in one case, they're managing for 3.5-year-old bucks. So that 3.5-year-old comes through that you pass, they're going to shoot him if they have the chance. The other neighbors, they're meat hunters. God love them. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely, positively nothing wrong with being a meat hunter in any way, shape, or form. That said, that 3.5-year-old buck goes over there, and you darn right they're going to shoot him as well. Managing for 4.5-year-old bucks in this situation is, you can do whatever you want, but that's probably asking a bit much. Now you take the same 80, you put it in a good area in Iowa where there's a surplus of 4.5-year-old bucks. You put it in a good area in Illinois, Missouri, Buffalo County, Wisconsin. Now, these types of areas, southeastern Minnesota, there's areas of Michigan that are actually managed pretty tightly. There's areas of Pennsylvania that are managed pretty darn tightly. If you have a decent amount of 4.5-year-old bucks around to begin with, then managing for 4.5-year-old bucks, in my opinion, makes sense. All that said, it is 100% up to each one of you to decide for yourself what legal animals you want to ethically shoot yourself. And you know what attention you should pay to anybody who's telling you any different? Not a darn bit, because it's none of their darn business whatsoever. This is 100% your choice. All I'm trying to do is help paint what is realistic, what isn't. When it comes to managing deer, okay, we all, most of us, want to hunt 5.5, 6.5-year-old bucks. Guess what? That is not the real world in a lot of situations. Most situations, if you own an 80, even a 40, most situations you can manage for 3.5-year-olds if you want to. Unless you're talking 400, 500, 600 acres, managing for 4.5s though in a lot of areas just does not make a lot of sense. Okay, you can do it, but you're going to be frustrated an awful lot. That said, you take a 20, a 40, you put it in one of those money zones where there's a surplus of 4.5-year-old animals, game on. Ultimately, though, it's up to you to decide. No one else. My advice, shoot what makes you happy. We're here again with Matt Arndt of Matt's Healthy Woods and Wildlife, one of my favorite people to interview. And the reason is because Matt, right now, he's going to tell us how we deal with invasives. When it comes to just plain managing our timber, as well as when we do timber cuts, how do we make it so that invasives don't just go ahead and take over?
And the specifics to that question are going to be different in different parts of the country.
Sure,
because
I know that is a loaded question.
so
right there.
the general rule is, as far as forest invasive species, more light is going to cause those invasive species to thrive. So before you do a timber harvest, before you open the canopy for any reason, you want to make sure that you have those invasive species controlled ahead of time when they're a lot easier to control. And that may mean delaying your timber harvest 1 or 5 years while you treat those invasives, but the treatment before you open that canopy is very, very important, as well as monitoring in the long term to catch those populations when they're small before they really, really start to take over.
And another tremendously loaded question here, because it's going to vary. But generally speaking, what is the best means of dealing with invasives?
It differs on time of year. It differs on species. Take bush honeysuckle, for example. Here in Missouri, it stays green about 2 weeks, 3 weeks later in the year than any of the native species. So there's a window in the late fall, usually right around the rifle deer season, where the honeysuckle is green but nothing else is. So just a foliar treatment with glyphosate, just a generic 2% glyphosate, will kill the honeysuckle but not affect the good trees and shrubs.
And a person, please correct me if I'm wrong, but in that scenario, you can actually hire that to be flown.
It is possible, yes.
You know, to go over and just one treatment, boom, done, or go out there with a backpack sprayer.
And that's going to depend on the size of your area, the level of infestation. Every invasive treatment project is different. So the solution has to be customized to the problem.
Certainly. And then hack and squirt is another very, very common method, and that is where you go in there, you literally cut the trees, and
you hack the tree with the hatchet, spray the herbicide into the tree, it dies standing. The foliar spray is common. The hack and squirt cut stump, treating the stump with herbicide after you cut it. Bull hog, a forestry grinder, basically shreds the tree. It'll resprout. Follow up and spray those resprouts. Burning is sometimes effective, especially in combination with some of the other treatments. So again, the solution just has to be customized to the problem.
Again, I know we're speaking generalities here, but generally speaking, you go ahead and you get out there, you treat, eliminate these invasives before your logging practice. After that, as I said, we're talking generalities here, mind you, but generally speaking, Every other year, control burn does wonders, doesn't it?
A prescribed fire does very, very good controlling new sprouts because those new plants are going to be the most sensitive. It's going to be very effective for that.
So you have yourself a mature stand of autumn olive, and you know what? That control burn probably isn't going to do you much.
No.
But you go through and do a hack and squirt 2 years later now, after your logging has been taken care of. Now you go through and do a control burn, and it's almost like an oil change on the vehicle. It just keeps it running smoothly.
And for very young seedlings, the fire alone will kill them. For larger ones, they may continue to resprout, so follow-up chemical treatments may be necessary also.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Matt. As you can see, small properties, they come with their own set of challenges, but we have tools that we can use to help address those challenges. Are we ever going to be able to make that 40, hunt like 4,000 acres? No, we're not. But I'm betting, like me, an awful lot of you are just be happy to be able to take our hunting experience up a very significant notch, and that is exactly what we can do by following these procedures.